The piece that I'm really excited to dive into is the Canadian Black Empowerment Manifesto in partnership with the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. So can you tell us a little bit about the manifesto? What is it and why is it relevant?
Yeah, okay. Wow. About it, first of all, that was it. In July, I released a document called the Black Empowerment Manifesto. And the intention were to, unfortunately, throw it over the wall and say, here guys, I have taken some time to look at what I consider to be a current state. And the current state for me was what has transpired in the last 50 years that got us to this point. So from 1970 to 2020, that was 50 years. And I did quite an exploration over those 50 years, see what has happened. Why are we at this intersection? Notwithstanding COVID, because even without COVID, we have some concerns about what have we achieved. Is it empirically, can we measure it? We probably have received, I don't know, maybe $250 million or $500 million, I don't know, in funding of all descriptions. And today, when I look at some of the problems we are having, or maybe we want to call them concerns, but I think they're real problems because scientifically, they're even called wicked problems, meaning that they're very difficult to solve. So they are problems. So when I look at the problems, I want to look at the headlines. I see a repeat of many of the headlines. The anti-racism issues, the employment equity issues, diversity training, all the things that we have done in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. In fact, we have repeated them consistently. And every time there was something triggered, a repeat, whether it's gun violence, the year of the gun, and I think it was 2008, I believe. I think 2005 was another issue. Every time we had a dramatic issue in the Black community, we kicked off a whole series of studies and research, what have you. So I looked at least 7 major governmental research, multi-billion-dollar programs, and the recommendations were generally along the same. And they go back under at least 4 or 5 different leaders. So what it sensed to me was that although we were using the scientific methods, let's measure in order to fix things, I think we were measuring the symptoms and not the problems, because the symptoms is what tends to drive action. So for instance, if there were a lot of violence, it may drive action to do something to mitigate the violence. But the violence is not the problem, it's the symptom of a deeper underlying problem. Where does that problem lie? And that problem could lie, and I have seen that the problem lies in some things that are not very measurable and quantifiable. And some even relies in the human spirit. It relies on everything from whether mothers or families have adequate jobs, adequate resources to put their kids into the right schools and good formal education. So the problem may be, as you see it, might be violence, but it isn't. It's a symptom of a deeper underlying problem. So we generally try to fix the symptoms. So we may say more policing and what have you. But the key really is that may not be it might be a stopgap measure. Like we could build bigger prisons, but we still have the pipeline to prison. So are we really looking at the problems or the symptoms? And these symptoms-oriented approaches have brought us here. So what I tried to do with the manifesto is to, first of all, yes, I did put out a manifesto, it was 70 pages, and it came to the eyeballs of yourself and Ryan, of course. And Ryan sort of insisted that we take a deeper look because he felt there was something very substantial about the manifesto and do a manifesto 2.0. So I will quickly say to you that 2.0 is 240 pages. So imagine a 70-page document that I thought that was the end, that I'll go back to my normal routine. And I end up with this commission to go back and take a look at those 50 years and then project the next 50 years. Now I did some projection in the previous manifesto of if it took us 50 years to get to this point, let's give ourselves another 50 years. Not that we will need 50 years, because we've got a blueprint now. So it could accelerate us within 5-10 years. We could probably release our IPO on the New York Stock Exchange or the Toronto Stock Exchange. It could probably take care of every funding need. As an example, let me give you a quick example of how important these things are. This new perspective is in 1979, 97, Amazon launched the IPO, $18.25, 15th of March. Today, if you had bought 10,000 shares, we would be worth over $13 million. So that tells you that we work very hard. We are very objective about what we do. Our problem is, are we working very smart, and are we looking at areas outside of what might be the common knowledge areas? We may start some programming, some digital things there. We may open barber salons, we may open restaurants and all. But are we looking beyond that? Are we using the benefit of this industrial mind that we have? So one of the centerpieces of the manifesto is the industrial mindset. To build a nation, you need an industrial base. If you look at all the powerful nations in the world, you look at Germany, you look at Japan after the Reconstruction, you look at China, you look at India, all industrial. You look at the 5 dragons or the 5 tigers, they were worst off. In fact, they were looking at them as third world countries. Today, they are very powerful industrial nations. So the manifesto is saying to us, yes, culturally, we are very strong and it keeps us together. But in concurrent with all the cultural imperatives, we ought to start looking at the industrial mindset. And if you go back over 100 years, Booker T. Washington, who speaking to us about the industrial mindset. He ran an industrial school, Tuskegee training school, and he'd been appealing. So in some ways, I'm saying I'm walking in Booker T's shoes and putting out another appeal over 100 years later, saying to our people that industrial mindset. What industrial mindset means, it will change a lot of things in our minds, even our funding models. Most of the funding models are sort of program-oriented. They're short-term models. If you look at our work, we are saying 50 years. So right away, we're putting you in a different mindset. 50 years. And it doesn't mean 50 years you have time to waste. What it means is that we have the Industrial Revolution that's barreling down upon us. And there will be transformation taking place over the next 50 years. Now, the thing about the COVID, it probably will be short-term and have some residual effects. But the benefits we have with the Industrial Revolution, the 4th Industrial Revolution, is that we do have a long window, but we have to move very fast because the nature of jobs are changing. If you look at the 3 Industrial Revolutions, we haven't benefited. Although a lot of the wealth came from slave labor, free labor, through sugar plantation, cocoa, and what have you. We did not benefit, but we contributed significantly. As a matter of fact, when I was doing the research, I discover a furnace, an African furnace, very primitive furnace. To usher in the 1st Industrial Revolution, we needed to be able to smelt steel, take it up to 1,000 degrees centigrade so we could build engines and steam engines and railroads and all that. And there was a furnace that's called the Bessemer furnace in Europe. And that furnace was patterned over that African furnace. Right? And this is a fact. These are all facts of history. And we contributed in many other ways, but we never benefited. So we had automation, we had computers, and now this is new 4th Industrial Revolution is really driven by artificial intelligence. So some people think the 4th Industrial Revolution is about digital technology. No, it's just what inspires it, what takes it to the next level. So everyone is crowded to digital technology, and they're forgetting that the Industrial Revolution means a total re-engineering of society in almost every aspect. In about a decade or so, we may not see a single gas station on the planet. Okay, so this is the kind of massive transformation that's taking place, and it does call for a different mindset.